Hello, Federico, and welcome to the podcast series. It's an absolute privilege for us to actually have you on the series to find out more details on We Are Innovation. Let's start off with that, Federico. Tell us more about We Are Innovation. What is this organization? How did it actually come about?
Thank you, Shaq. Thank you for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. Um, about We Are Innovation. We Are Innovation is a network of think tanks, foundations, and NGOs that started approximately 5 years ago. Originally, it was born in Latin America, and then it grew to other parts of the world. And now we are very proud to have 51 members in 4 different continents in 29 countries. So the organization has grown a lot. And as the name says it very clearly, we, let's say, want to defend innovation. We want to see it thrive. We want entrepreneurs and innovators to be able to do what they do best, which is improving our lives. When they are successful, usually it's because they have found a new business model, a new service, or a new product that makes our lives better. So we want to create an environment that allows them to thrive.
So, Federico, the question, of course, well, I wanted to basically ask also when you're talking about where innovation, and at which point did you realize, at which point did you actually have this aha moment that this organization can actually work and can actually work for different things to make the world a better place?
It's a very good question. I don't know if I've ever had it, and I don't know if I ever will, because it's always a struggle. It's always, you have to find ways to be more effective. But what we really think, Shaq, is that, let's say, most of people in probably all over the world, they are in favor of innovation, and they understand the positive impact that innovation has on their lives. So I think that that makes our work easier. Than it's not easy, but let's say at least we are from a very good platform or starting point. Because we really think that people in general are very positively affected by innovation. So in that regard, we think it's let's say it's a work that is worthy and that it's socially appreciated. And also the interest of many organizations to join our network also is like a thermometer that seems to show that we are on the right track.
Federico, what personally has been the inspiration as far as innovation is concerned for you? How has it actually changed over time? Because you are right smack in the middle of it, running the organization. Personally, for you, as far as inspiration is concerned, how has things actually changed as far as innovation is?
Personally, I am very much influenced by the work on innovation by Matt Ridley, by Adam Thierer, and what let's say they have basically two views that I really espouse as well. The first one, on the case of, or in the case of Matt Ridley, we tend to think of innovation as like very high technology, things that are very much on the margin. And many times it's not like that. Of course, innovation has a relationship with technology, but in many cases, innovation can be just recombining things that already existed, make a different use of something that was used, for one purpose, use it for another. And in many cases, that's what innovators do. And also, and this comes from Matt Ridley, innovators bring, let's say, these very high tech developments to the masses. Let's say they democratize the access towards services, towards products, towards new business models. And that, I think, it's a huge part of what innovation is and should be. So that is a big part of what think and how I see innovation. And the other part comes from Adam Thierer, who also has influenced me a lot. That innovation should be permissionless in principle. And what I mean is that unless an authority or a government body can build a very strong case against a new product, a new business model, innovations should be allowed by default, and it should be us citizens, consumers, who decide if we adopt those innovations or not. But those innovations in general should never be blocked, stopped, even banned by faceless bureaucracies, by rules that nobody understands. Innovation should be embraced, innovation should be encouraged.
Federico, I'm going to ask you a question. I mean, obviously, in terms of innovation, what, in your opinion, actually drives innovation? Is it technology or is it the people behind the technology?
I would put more emphasis on the people than on the technology. The technology is definitely a part, but as I said, sometimes, let's say, very peak technology is a little bit far from our daily lives. And the key part of innovation is taking those technologies, for instance, and make them available for the largest amount of people possible. And that's what innovators do. What innovators do is take very extreme, let's say, technological developments and make them available to the masses. And that's why, in general, they improve our lives, because they give us access to things that we couldn't access before.
Talk us through some innovation stories, Federico. I'm sure being in the organization, you've actually come across many stories out there. Some of them, I'm sure, have made headlines around the world. Talk us through some of the innovation stories that you've been a part of, or the organization has personally played a role in.
Well, we've been working on a lot of topics in the last 5 years, Shaq, and everything really that we've been doing, it's amazing, and we have coincided with a lot of very interesting people, with a lot of people with great ideas. Let's say nowadays, something that really mobilizes me is everything that has to do with the developments of nuclear technology, particularly in its relationship with AI and the energetic demands that AI is already posing and will pose in the future. Artificial intelligence will need a lot of energy, and the revival of nuclear energy and, let's say, electricity production via nuclear power plants is something that I think is very interesting. And in that sector, you find a lot of very interesting and clever people. Also, of course, and we'll talk about this later, but let's say the advancements that innovation can give us in order to fight and defeat smoking, hopefully, is something also that really makes us very optimistic for the future. We also really like developments. The organization, as I mentioned, was born in Latin America, and innovation has done a lot and is doing currently a lot to help people in Latin America. FinTech innovation is doing a lot to help people to finally have a bank account and allow them to be part of a more formal part of the economy. That's really great, that you can open a bank account with your cell phone, for instance. So there are a lot of very good things happening, Jacques, and that, I think, is the key issue. Sometimes, because of how news cycles work and how sometimes what we tend to see on social media works. By the way, I'm a great fan of social media, but sometimes we tend to put too much attention on bad news. And definitely there are bad things happening in the world. That's true. I'm not naive. But there are also a lot of very good things happening. And in many areas of good things, good developments, things that are improving our lives, innovation is playing a role. So also we should pay attention to that, because it's not only doom and gloom. There are a lot of positive things going on.
You know, Federico, the thing is, as far as humans are concerned, we're scheduled individuals. We basically have a schedule that we follow on a daily basis. We wake up in the morning, we know exactly what we're going to do, we know what time we got to work. when you talk about innovation, when we are basically introducing innovation, it is a stumbling block to our schedule. Now, obviously, where do you see the barriers as far as innovation is concerned? Is it the fear of change, maybe, or is it the fact that you've got regulations that are holding innovations back? I know you touched on it earlier on when we were talking about it, but honestly, where is the barrier for innovations to actually flourish in this world?
I would say the following, and we could be talking all day about this, so I'll try to be brief, but it's a very important question. Firstly, being an innovator, being an entrepreneur is very difficult. Let's start with that. Most of startups, most of companies fail. Let's say most ideas that we have, let's say business ideas, fail. That's what happens. That's the reality. And it only means that. I mean, it's not failure in this regard should not be taken, oh my God, this is the worst thing that can ever happen. No, most ideas, most business ideas fail. You think, oh, this will be the best product, the best service for everyone. And no, people don't like it because of a myriad of reasons. So that's the first thing we have to take into consideration. And also innovators, entrepreneurs put a lot of effort. They risk a lot many times, most of the times I would say, to try to make their idea work, working countless hours per day, per week, to make things work, putting their life savings on the line, maybe their family's life savings on the line to try to make to try to make the business work. So let's say being an innovator is very difficult, and most innovators will fail. That's the reality. But the ones that succeed, as I was saying, they most likely will improve our lives. So we have to create an environment that probably does that at least does two things. Firstly, does not punish you even further for being an innovator, because already, let's say, the market already punishes you a lot because most likely you will fail. And secondly, allow that that failure is not that, let's say, brutal on the innovator, that you can start again. Because if you start again, if you are there again, I was talking about this with a colleague of mine, you learned a lot, you probably are less naive than the same time, and maybe your chances of succeeding are greater now. So it's very important also that we allow people to fail and to be able to start again. So that's the reality of innovation. Also, innovators have to deal with regulatory environments and with social climates, both things. And both things can be either very pro-innovation or very anti-innovation, or a mixture. What we would like to see are regulatory environments that allow innovators to at least try, not to, let's say, make them fail at the beginning. Not even in some cases, many innovators in many countries around the globe cannot even start let's say, put in practice their idea because regulation either has been captured by big players that don't want any competition or disruption, or has been, let's say, written in such a way that basically forbids anything new to be done. So that we think it's a huge threat to innovation. On the social climate, I think in general, Jacques, I think most of us tend to favor innovation. And by the way, in the past, we've done opinion polling in 5 countries in Latin America about this, and this was more or less proven. Let's say people in general value innovation, they value the positive effect that it has on their lives. They relate innovation to economic growth, to job creation. So people in general tend to favor innovation. There are, unfortunately, some small but very vocal minorities, and sometimes minorities that have a very clear interest, that tend to try to stop or even ban innovation. Let's say those are the risks that innovation faces. But I think, let's say let's say, if you allow me to, from a democratic point of view, if you made people vote all the time if they want a new business product or service, overwhelmingly majorities would say yes, we want this, let us try, and let's see if we adopt this or not. So that, I think, is a huge advantage for innovation.
So, Federico, where do you think? I mean, where do you think the barrier really is? Is it, for as far as innovators are concerned? Is it money? Is it politics? Is it culture? What's actually holding innovators back? Because just like what you said, if regulatory systems out there were far more relaxed, and if big corporates actually allow smaller startups to actually come up, even though they are replicating their product, there's a choice for consumers out there. Where's the problem? What's the issue here?
Well, all the ones that you mentioned, Shaq, play a role, definitely. I think, let's say, we have to be we have to put a lot of attention on which kind of regulation our countries have. Because, let's say, you find successful and innovators, entrepreneurs from many countries around the globe, maybe all countries around the globe. But a lot of those successful innovators don't succeed in their own countries. They have to go to a different country. And why is that? It's because they go to a country in which they find a better environment, a better climate to do what they want to do. So in that regard, I think, definitely sometimes culture can play a role. Definitely, let's say, being able to access venture capital, even angel investments, plays a role as well, definitely. But the kind of regulatory environment that you have to face, in many cases, decides if you can start or not. And basically, if you cannot start, we'll never know if your idea was a good idea and will create a lot of value for society, for citizens. And in many cases, those individuals had a good idea and had to go somewhere else. And, let's say, enrich firstly other countries, not their own, because they couldn't find a welcoming environment in their own country. So that is extremely important, to secure that you have a regulatory environment that makes life easy for innovators. It's extremely important.
So, Federico, let's talk about resistance to change. And why I want to speak about this is, of course, innovation is what we're talking about. Let's talk about mobile phones as an example. Before we had touchscreen mobile phones, we had analog mobile phones. Everybody was very comfortable. Come the touch screen, of course, the younger generation obviously love it. But you've got the older generation who are still finding very, very difficult to move on. Why are we still resistant to change, even though we know that it's actually going to help us in the long run?
Well, Jacques, I'm sure there are, let's say, small pockets in every society that prefer the old, I don't know, Nokia phones with, but I think in general people embrace innovation and embrace better products, and better products, let's say, it's not that impose themselves. If nobody liked big screens and touch screen phones, they would have been a failure. There have been a lot of very innovative and very high-tech products in the past that were not accepted by people. So our view, and again, this is supported to a certain extent by data, is that populations, the citizenry of different countries, in general, accept innovation and they welcome innovation and they acknowledge that it has a very positive effect in their lives, let's say, as citizens, as consumers, and also as workers, because they also understand that innovation increases economic chances, increases economic well-being. We tend to have a very optimistic view about that.
So, Federico, the reason we're actually talking about it is because we're going to be leading into our second episode, and you're talking about resistance in many industries as far as innovation is concerned. Now, we're going to jump into the second episode, and just giving you a lead up to the second episode is, of course, we're going to get into one of the most controversial subjects out there as far as tobacco and nicotine is concerned. Now, we're jumping into that because as far as resistance to innovation in that particular area is what we're going to be basically speaking to Federico. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a fabulous series that's actually coming up right here, and this, of course, is definitely something that we're going to be talking to, the path to smoke free, and we're talking about innovation. We're going to talk about how innovation can actually help in what we're talking about right here in Sri Lanka with Federico, and that's coming up in episode 2 of Path to Smoke Free podcast series. We'll be back right after this.